Hey guys, my name is JC and today we're playing Aminatou the Fateshifter. This is a Planeswalker deck that looks to win the game through emblems and ultimates, while also taking advantage of blink effects using Aminatou's ability. If this seems like the kind of deck you'd like to play, then make sure to swing by the channel where we do have a deck tech discussing all of the included cards as well as the overall strategy. Let's see just how powerful Aminatou and her friends can be. Okay guys, let's have a look at who we're playing today. We have Breya Etherium Shaper, Lathiel the Bounteous Dawn, and finally we have Tergrid, God of Fright. Okay, if we look at our opening hand, we don't have any ramp. We do have access to a board wipe, which is always good. I'm expecting to see creatures come down from Lathiel. Breya, maybe. It's always a bit of a coin cost depending on how the deck's built. And Tergrid, we probably won't see too much come down. But I do like having a win condition in our hand as well as an early Teferi, so it's a little more riskier, but we'll keep it and we'll see how we go. Okay, and we do draw a land for turn, which is really nice to see. So let's just start off, we'll play our Scalding Tarn, we'll crack it, and we'll put our Rafine's Tower into play. And that'll be our turn done. Breya plays a Fabled Passage for turn, they immediately crack it, and they're going to find a basic land to put into the battlefield tapped. And that's their turn done. Lathiel plays a land, and they cast a Serra Ascendant. A 1/1 with lifelink, as long as you have 30 or more life, Serra Ascendant gets +5/+5 and has flying. Which is definitely not good news for our deck, because an evasive creature that's quite big is probably going to be able to one-shot a lot of our Planeswalkers, and that is their turn done. Tergrid plays a land for turn, and they cast a Sol Ring. Well, hopefully that might draw some of the heat of the Serra Ascendant, and then they also cast that into a Mind Stone. And that's it for the Tergrid player. Which is also looking quite scary over there, because that's going to be a Tergrid potentially coming down next turn. We draw a Gilded Lotus. Well, let's just put our Polluted Delta into play. We'll crack it now. We'll put our Watery Grave into play, but we'll have it come into play tapped. And then we'll pass the turn there. Breya plays a land. And now they cast a Mycosynth Wellspring. When it ETBs or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you may search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. And they find themselves a mountain, which goes to hand. And that's it for them. Okay, well let's see if that fast start has attracted the ire of the Lathiel player. They play a Fabled Passage, they crack it right away, and they put a Forest into play tapped. Now they move to combat, and thankfully the Serra Ascendant does go over towards the Tergrid player. Damage goes through, and that's it for their turn. It looks like a Suspend counter is coming off Mox Tantalite, so Tergrid definitely did have a great turn before. Tergrid starts by playing a fetch land for turn. They crack it right away, and they play their commander, Tergrid, God of Fright. Menace, whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. And that is it for them. And what an answer to draw right there, Toxic Deluge. You could not ask for anything better, so let's play our Fetid Heath for turn. And we're going to cast Toxic Deluge, paying 6 life into it. That goes through, and that'll be us done. Breya plays a land for turn, and now they cast Swiftfoot Boots, and they just leave it there. Lathiel plays a land, and now they cast Kadama of the West Tree. Reach, modified creatures you control have trample. Whenever a modified creature you control deals combat damage to a player, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle. And that's it for the Lathiel player. On Tergrid's upkeep, Mox Tantalite loses another Suspend counter, so it's got one more left before they cast it next turn. Tergrid plays a land, it is a Dust Bowl, and now they cast Geth's Grimoire. Whenever an opponent discards a card, you may draw a card. And then they follow that up with Virus Beetle. When Virus Beetle enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card. That's quite a strong follow-up from the Geth's Grimoire. We'll discard our Ob Nixilis. We can get it back with our Spirit Sister's Call. And that will trigger Geth's Grimoire 3 times, drawing the Tergrid player 3 cards. And they end the turn there. We draw into a land, a Khan's Bastion. So we'll start by playing Khan's Bastion. And then let's get our Teferi into play. That resolves. Let's uptick Teferi, drawing a card and then discarding a card. We draw into an Animate Dead, which I might actually keep for the Serra's Ascendant, provided we can keep our life total high enough. So I think I'll discard the Gilded Lotus here. Now unfortunately that does trigger Geth's Grimoire, so we have to be careful in how we use it, and we'll just leave the turn there. Breya plays a land. Now they start by casting a Sol Ring, then they follow that up with a Mere Retriever. When it dies, return another target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. They move straight through combat. Now they move to their end step. I'm going to uptick Teferi one more time, because in that way we can phase out Kadama if they decide to swing in at Teferi, and it'll also protect it from the Beetle. Wouldn't be bad if we drew a land here either. Out of time? Okay, that's a perfect answer. So I think we can actually get rid of our Vanquish the Horde. That will trigger Get's Grimoire, drawing Tergrid another card. And that'll be our turn done. Lathiel starts by casting Hyena Umbra onto Kadama. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 and has first strike. And it also has Totem Armor. Well, they will be partly incentivized here to hit a player with Kadama, because its land searching ability does specifically say to deal combat damage to a player. So that might buy us a bit of a chance that it doesn't hit Teferi. Though it's quite understandable if they do want to bring it down, in case they're worried that we are going to keep upticking, feeding Tergrid as well as get to the 2 extra turns. So they move to combat. Let's see what they decide. And they decide to hit the Tergrid player. That's great. So it looks like the fear of Tergrid is certainly kicking in this game, and it's helping us. It's definitely working in our favor. Combat damage goes through. That triggers Kadama. Well, even though I said previously I wasn't going to uptick Teferi, I think now that we get one more land, we can cast Deep Glow Skate next turn and get Teferi to its ultimate. I think we're going to have to feed the Tergrid player here, so it may come to bite us in the butt, but luckily we draw a land right there. Bit of a hard call in what we actually get rid of, but I think we have to get rid of the Animate Dead. That triggers Get's Grimoire. Tergrid draws another card, and that's it for the Lathiel player. Mox Tantalite loses its last suspend counter for the Tergrid player. Now, you won't hear this very often, but I actually hope that the Tergrid does come down this turn. That way we can get our Deep Glow Skate, get a few extra turns, and then resolve the out of time, so that permanently gets rid of Tergrid as a problem. And Kadama of the West Tree isn't a bad creature to sweep up in it either. That can accrue a lot of value very quickly. So now Tergrid casts Mox Tantalite. They play a land for turn. It is an Urborg. Tergrid starts by casting Liliana Heretical Healer. 2/3 lifelink. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, exile Liliana, then return it to the battlefield transformed. If you do, create a 2/2 black zombie. Oh, now they straight away cast Viscera Seer, sack a creature, scry one. And then that does flip into Liliana Defiant Necromancer, where each player can discard a card, or they can return target non-legendary creature with mana value X from their graveyard to their battlefield. And their emblem we'll worry about when it gets there. Hopefully it won't. They are able to sack their beetle straight away to transform their Liliana. They'll also get to scry one from the Viscera Seer. Now they uptick their Liliana, each player discards a card. This is going to be a hard choice for us. Unfortunately, I think it's going to have to be the Spirit Sister's Call, just because the out of time is so powerful and Deep Glow Skate is a strong finisher. I really did want to keep that Spirit Sister's Call though. I absolutely love that card in this deck. That will trigger Get's Grimoire 3 times. And now Tergrid also casts Crucible of Worlds. You may play land cards from your graveyard, which they do have a Polluted Delta and a Swamp in there. They move to end step. I'm not going to activate Teferi now that it has 6 loyalty counters. It means it will survive once we get our Deep Glow Skate into play. So let's move to our turn and see what we get. And we draw into a land. Well, let's start by playing our Sunken Ruin for turn. Now we do have the Breya player with some blue mana and red mana available, so there is every chance they could cast a counter spell, but based on what happened with the Tergrid player, it's likely they would have used some counter magic, seeing as they're getting very far ahead over there, but I guess we can only try. But if this does resolve, it's going to put us in a very, very strong position. So let's give it a go, guys, and hope for the best. The Breya player is holding priority, but it does pass through. That's great. And we get the Deep Glow Skate. That is awesome. All right, let's uptick our Teferi. Let's double those counters. And now that Teferi is at 12 counters, let's downtick him to take 2 extra turns after this. Now that is everything that we can do for this turn, so let's move to our first extra turn. And we draw Liliana Dreadhorde General. Okay, well now our opponents definitely need interaction for our Planeswalkers. So let's play our Swamp for turn. Let's cast Liliana. That resolves. We're going to uptick Liliana to make a zombie. And then we'll pass the turn to our second and final turn. Which, fingers crossed, if we get to it and there's no interaction, it's going to be probably the final turn of the game. We draw a land for turn. We'll play that straight away. Now let's cast our commander. Now that resolves. Now we're going to attempt to flicker our Deep Glow Skate. We'll target all our Planeswalkers with the Deep Glow Skate's ability. And now let's downtick and use Liliana's ultimate. Each opponent chooses a permanent they control of each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. Not often you get to reach this ultimate, so when you do, you've got to enjoy yourself. And that has 2 opponents scooping up there. And the Breya player is choosing their Island, their Mere Retriever, and their Sol Ring to keep around. Now, because the Mycosynth Wellspring does hit the graveyard, they are going to be able to tutor up for a basic land card and put it into their hand. Now we've done that, we'll uptick Teferi to draw and discard. We draw a Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. I think we'll just discard that. We don't need that at the moment. The out of time is too good. We'll send in our zombie token. And I'll give credit to the Breya player for playing on here. Most people do just scoop up at this point. So if they want to keep on fighting the good fight, well, good on them. We'll keep with it. They decide to block with their Mere Retriever. They are going to return an artifact. And they target their Mycosynth Wellspring. And then we're just going to pass the turn there. So now they start their turn by casting their Mycosynth Wellspring. They find themselves a Plains. And they play that land. And that is it for their turn. We draw a Bojuka Bog for turn. We'll play our Bojuka Bog. We'll have it target Breya. Breya decks do usually run a good amount of graveyard recursion. Some of them even love to loop the graveyard. So that gets rid of that. Now we'll uptick Liliana. We'll make a 2/2 zombie. Then we'll activate Teferi to draw and discard. And we get a Rhystic Study, but I'll let the Rhystic Study go. Then we'll use Aminatou to flicker the Deep Glow Scape. We'll target all our walkers once again. Now we'll move to combat. We'll send in our zombie token. And then we'll pass it over from here. Breya plays a land for turn. Now they start by casting Vampiric Tutor. That is dangerous, though it is in their main phase, and if we get to our next turn, it's not really going to be too much of a problem at all, seeing as we can activate Liliana again and get extra turns with Teferi. And it looks like that's it for the Breya player. We draw Temporal Mastery for turn. So because we drew it as our first card for turn, we only get to pay 2 mana for it instead of 7 to get an extra turn, and we'll definitely take that. And that's it for the game there, guys. Alright, let's go to the review and discuss what happened. So I do have to start by saying that although we did win this game, I really shouldn't have kept that opening hand. We needed more lands or at least some ramp, because if I had missed just one land drop that game, the outcome could have been very different. Luckily for us, fate was on our side, and not only did we draw enough lands, but we also drew a perfectly timed board wipe when the Tergrid player was starting to accelerate very far ahead of the rest of the table. We were also very fortunate our Teferi didn't get attacked by that Kodama of the West Tree, which would have forced us to down tick him to protect himself. If that had been the case, we would have needed at least another turn or two before we got his ultimate, which may have changed how the game played out. But beside that bit of good fortune, it was really good to be able to see the power of Deep Glow Skate. Being able to get its ETB effect turn after turn using our commander's ability really puts its power into overdrive, as we saw this game. Well, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed seeing Aminatou and her friends showcase that Planeswalkers in Commander can be a real threat, especially if you have a bit of luck on your side. Until next time, guys.